A beautiful listing on ImmoScout can look like your next dream investment until you realize it is way overpriced. So how do you find out the real value of a property before you sign a contract you will regret for the next 30 years? Lucky you, the German government has a strict law called Immobilienwertermittlungsverordnung that dictates exactly how properties are valued. Let's break down the 3 official real estate valuation methods so you'll know you are not overpaying by tens of thousands of euros when buying your next property. Here in Germany, the evaluation of real estate is not just a matter of gut feeling or negotiation. The law dictates exactly how appraisers must determine the real market value, known as the Verkehrswert. Every single time a property in Germany is sold, the notary is legally forced to send an anonymous copy of the contract to the local appraiser committee, Gutachterausschuss in German. Yes, the German government tracks every single real-world transaction in a database you probably never heard of, called the Kaufpreissammlung. And from this data, they calculate the Bodenrichtwert, the average price per square meter for the ground in any given street. This is critical. Before you look at the house, you have to value the plot it's standing on. And unlike an ImmoScout listing, this government database gives you exact, unfakeable numbers. The first legally regulated method is the comparative value method, Vergleichswertverfahren in German. It's based on a simple principle. The value of a property is similar to the sales prices of similar properties recently sold in the neighborhood. Important! This method uses real sales prices from the government database, not the asking prices you see on ImmoScout. If you try to value a property by just comparing it to other listings on ImmoScout, you are making a huge mistake because you're comparing your property to someone else's wish price. Now, properties are rarely identical twins, so appraisers use 2 different paths. First, the direct method. This is used if you are lucky enough to find a nearly identical property sold down the street just a few weeks ago. If 3 identical units down the street were sold for 400k last month, that is your baseline. No matter if a greedy seller on ImmoScout is asking for 600k for the exact same property. But usually appraisers have to rely on the indirect method. This is where that government database, the Kaufpreissammlung, comes back into play. The appraiser takes the real sales data of similar properties from the area, and to balance out the difference in living space, construction year or energy efficiency, they apply markups or discounts. The advantage of this method is its market proximity. It perfectly mirrors real-world supply and demand because it is based exclusively on real purchase prices. The Vergleichswertverfahren strips out the emotion and sticks to the facts, which is why it is highly accepted by German banks. But the facts are exactly the downside, because this method stands and falls with the availability of data. If you want to buy a highly customized luxury villa or a property in a rural village where barely any houses change hands, this method breaks down because there's simply not enough data. Plus, in times of extreme market fluctuations, past data can give you an outdated picture. And most importantly, this method is completely useless for property investments. Because for real estate investors, it's not about what the neighbor paid, it's about your return. And if you are looking for profitable investment properties with a really good return, then you can book a free strategy session with us right here. Just note, we are independent financial advisors, not an appraisal service. So please don't expect a free on-the-spot valuation based on a random ImmoScout link. After our call, you'll know anyway that ImmoScout is not worth your time nor your money. Speaking about money, method number 2 is the capitalized earnings method, Ertragswertverfahren in German. It puts profitability in the focus. That's why it is the holy grail for investment properties. If you're looking to buy a home for yourself to live in, the next method will be better. Here we ask a simple question: how much cash will the property produce? So step 1, calculate the rental income. You simply add up the annual cold rent you receive, or could receive as your baseline. Step 2. Calculate your net income. You can't keep all that cash from step 1 because you have operating costs, maintenance reserves, or the risk of vacancy. What is left over, it's what's actually landing in your pocket. Step 3. Split the profit. This is the most critical step because your property consists of the building and the land. The land lasts forever, but the building depreciates over time. The building earnings are called Liegenschaftszins in German. It is a fixed percentage set by the city that tells you what return investors expect in that specific area. If a city is extremely popular and the risk is low, like Munich, the number is low. If an area is unpopular, the number is higher. And the ground earnings are a fictional interest called Bodenwertverzinsung in German. Let's not get too technical here and just say the appraiser determines how much rent your tenant pays for the ground and how much he pays for the building. Now that we know what the building returns per year, it's time for step 4 because it won't live forever. So we look at how many years the building has left to live, the remaining useful life or Restnutzungsdauer. You simply project the building profit across its remaining lifetime and get the current value of your building. And lastly, in step 5, you simply reverse step 3. You take the building value from step 4, add it back to the land value and boom, you have your final Ertragswert. It's that easy. And because it uses real market rents, this method keeps the numbers highly realistic and transparent, giving investors a clear picture whether they should buy a property or not. But, and this is the downside, the entire calculation is dependent on the Liegenschaftszins from step 3 your city gives you. Even a small change of just 0.5% in this interest rate can artificially inflate tens of thousands of euros in property value. Plus, this method completely ignores future market dynamics. If a property is currently locked in an old, cheap rental contract, the classical under-rent situation, the formula sends your property value into the basement. That's why there is the real value method, Sachwertverfahren in German. It answers a very basic question. If the property burned down today, how much would it cost to rebuild it from scratch? And just like before, we split the property value into the ground value and the building value. The value of the plot is determined by using land value tables. Then the theoretical construction cost of a brand new identical building is added using government infrastructure tables known as Normalherstellungskosten. And because an older house isn't a new house, the appraiser applies an age-related deduction based on wear and tear. And then, to adjust the technical costs to the real world, they apply a regional adjustment factor. The benefit of this method is its raw objectivity. It focuses only on the actual construction quality and substance. A poorly maintained house in a hyped-up neighborhood won't automatically get an inflated price tag just because the surrounding area is expensive. And a massive villa in the back end of nowhere might cost 1 million euro in concrete and bricks, but if nobody wants to move into that village, the market value might only be 600k. Plus, it rewards energy efficient upgrades, modern isolation or renovations because they directly extend the remaining useful life of the building. But this heavy reliance on bricks and concrete is also the biggest downside because pure construction costs rarely reflect the actual market demand. A property boom or an uplift of the neighborhood is barely captured by this method. On top of that, it is completely useless for apartments because it doesn't factor in the location within the building. And usually, the higher the apartment, the higher the value. And that brings us to the final question of real estate valuation. If you evaluate a property, why does every single method give you a completely different price? The answer is simple, because each method measures something completely different. The comparative method uses what other buyings are emotionally willing to pay. The capitalized earnings method measures strictly the cash flow and rental yield, and the real world method measures the bricks and construction costs. And this is exactly why professional appraisers in Germany never rely on just one single calculation. They run two methods in parallel to cross-check their results. Determining the real value of a German property is not easy. And if you try to guess the value by just scrolling through listings on ImmoScout, you're essentially gambling with hundreds of thousands of euros. And that is exactly why we created perfinex.de/properties. On our website, you can access real estate investment opportunities that have already been checked and valued by independent experts. Check the link in the description to explore our listings. Thank you for watching und bis zum nächsten Mal.